is the arrow showing you? Because you know I love pathway, right? So if I ask you a question on trace the flow of information through a neuron, how would you rank these words? From what to what? So go ahead and consult your neighbor. How will you rank these words from what to what?
Dendrites are received.
Oh,
Input the output. Right, body axon, synapse. And then it starts over at the next line.
that the chromophilic substances, that would it go to that?
Yeah, put it with that.
So would it go into just meiosis and then down?
Yeah.
And down to wax? Through the axon, which is, and then through those, that node thing? And then out.
The body's kind of like a tank. And then the dendrites take in like rubber pipes that go in. And once
I'm
it fills
gonna
up,
pick on you guys.
it flushes it down.
Stacy, where should we start? Okay, we're gonna start the dendrite, all right? Next, Michael. So we're starting the dendrite. That's these things, right? Then where will be the next spot after the dendrite?
Dendrites, you would go to the synaptic nodes.
You said cell body, right? Okay, so it goes to cell body. So yeah, the dendrite is gonna go to the cell body. Agree? And go here. All right. Next up, Marissa. So we're in the cell body now. What might be the next stop? Okay, so at the cell body, might go toward the nucleus. Okay. Next up, Amanda. So we're here now. What might be the next stop?
The axon.
Yeah, the axon hillock. Agree? Okay. And then Anthony. We're at the axon hillock. What might be the next stop? Uh-huh. The axon, going down the axon, agree? Going down the axon. Okay. And then Catherine, so we're going down the axon, so we're somewhere here. What might be the next stop?
The neurofibril node.
The node, okay, going to the node. Okay, so we're going down the axon, and it actually goes from node to node. Okay, so instead of going down every single inch or every single millimeter, it actually jumps from node to node like that. Okay, because this myelin thing prevents it from going directly down the whole thing. It forces the impulse to jump from node to node. Okay. So think of this like the doorway. This is the wall. You can't go through the wall, so you gotta go to the doorway. Okay? Alright. Alright, let's finish it up. So we're at node to node. Lastly, Gina. So we're node to node. Finish it up. Okay, swan cell, we already bypassed a bunch of that. Then what? So we're gonna go down to the telodendria, right? You see little branching down here, telodendria, and then we finish at the synaptic knob. Does that make sense? Okay, so yeah, like I said, I love pathway. That's exactly the flow of information through a neuron. Okay? Right, let's do true or false, so everyone get a vote. Thumbs up for true, thumbs down for false. Flow of information through a neuron is unidirectional, meaning it's only one way. flow through a neuron is unidirectional, only one way. True or false? Okay, most of you say true, and I agree. But there's a few of you who said false, and I'm a little worried because we spent the last couple of minutes talking about flow from here to here to here. Agree? And you're, which is to me one way, don't you think? Are there arrows showing you going the reverse? No. So therefore, you have to assume there's only one way flow. Yeah.
Where it says the axon collateral, would that count as a different direction of the flow or no?
No, see when it comes down here, it can go this way. Right? It goes like this. But you don't have stuff coming back up this way. Okay? Yeah. Right. Does that make sense? Alright, so that's important to understand, especially next semester when we take physio. It's only one way flow through a neuron. Okay? Alright. Does this look familiar? Yep, it's Hall histology, we covered in lab already. Okay, classification of neurons. We talk about classifying neurons. So, this is relatively straightforward. How? How do we name these neurons? By processes, yes. Okay, let's be more specific. What about the processes? How many? Okay, let's finish up the sentence. Classify neurons by how many processes leaving the cell body. Exactly. Okay, how many processes attached to the cell body? Agree? So what are the types? Uni, bi, and multi. Okay, now uni, bi, and multi what? Polar. So polar, I want you to think like we talk about polar in chemistry, yes? Polar bond. We talk about, you take geography, you have a North Pole, a South Pole, agree? So what's a pole? What's polar?
Opposite charges.
Opposite charge for chemistry, yeah, but in this case, it's opposite ends, right? Opposite ends. So, so we have only one process that be unipolar, so there's only one end here. Bipolar, there are two ends, agree? Multipolar, because there are more than one, agree? Okay, relatively straightforward? Okay, most of the time we draw neurons like this. I don't know why, because they exist the most. It's very, the bipolar and the unipolar are much more rare. Okay, they're more rare. These are more common, so that's probably why this is the most famous picture of all neurons. But they do exist as uni and bi, okay? All right, and we will talk about where we see them coming up in a little while. All right, another way of looking at neurons is interneurons. Huh, interneurons. What does the prefix inter mean? In between. So put it together. These are neurons in between two other neurons, right? So they're kind of stuck in the middle. Does that make sense? Okay. So interneurons are going to be in between other neurons. Now, let's do some logic here. We talked about sensory and we talked about motor, agree? Correct? And you already know, where are sensory and motor neurons, according to this table? In the CNS or PNS? PNS. So take a wild guess. Where are we going to find interneurons? In the, remember you told me it's in between neurons, right? So this and this are in the PNS, sensory and motor, which means interneurons are going to be in the CNS. Okay, can be in the CNS. Alright, once again, let's do a different pathway. back to my full bladder example, okay? When you say that's the beginning or the end of a pathway, beginning, right? So the afferent sensory, the full bladder, that would be the beginning, correct? And then, so that'd be a sensory neuron, okay, sensory neuron. And then what do we say? It's gonna go to the, where's this information go? It's gonna go to the brain, the CNS, right? So in the CNS, it's gonna meet up with the interneurons. That's the middle portion, okay? The brain then decide what to do with this information, right? And that will then leave via the efferent neuron, agree? So this would be the end. Okay, so it's a pathway, right? Sensory neuron, interneurons, motor neurons. Understand that loop? Okay, so beginning, sensory, then meet up with interneurons, then finish up with efferent motor neurons. That would be the end. Okay. So more pathways, okay? And for each neuron, I need you to remember that picture of dendrite, cell body, axon. Because they all have that. This neuron, this neuron, this neuron, they all have that configuration. Dendrite, cell body, axon. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So here, someone read for me this, please.
Interneurons facilitate communication between sensory and motor neurons.
Right? Interneuron facilitate between sensory and motor. So we start here, go here, we end here. That's what that sentence is saying. Okay? So here's visual, for those of you who like visual. So, pathway, where do we start? Skin. So that's number one, agree? Okay, I'm going to go down the list here. Whoever that picked up. Okay, Rosa. Skin's number one. 'Cause, you know, I love to rank things, right? What's going to be next? The cell body of this sensory neuron, right? So it's going to go this way, right? So, okay, we can call that number two. Cell body. Ah, look at that. It's a ganglion. What's a ganglion? But there's cell body of neurons in the CNS. Are we outside the brain and spinal cord here?
Yes.
We sure are. Okay, so introduce a new word. Posterior or dorsal. Dorsal root ganglion. Okay, posterior root ganglion or dorsal root ganglion. What the heck does dorsal or posterior mean? It's in the back, right? It's in the back. Okay, so sensory neuron is, this is your spinal cord. Sensory neuron is in the back. Coming in, so that this bump here is the cell body, and it's in the dorsal root ganglion. Okay, dorsal root ganglion. Okay, now let's look at this sensory neuron. Is it, okay, here, take your vote, 1, 2, or 3. 1, unipolar, 2, bipolar, 3, multipolar neuron. 1, 2, or 3. Unipolar, bipolar, or multipolar? What do you guys think? Sensory neuron. Okay, most of you say 1, and you're correct, because there's only one process. Agree? So it's unipolar. The most famous example of unipolar neurons are sensory neurons. Okay, Most famous unipolar neuron, sensory neurons. Okay? Alright, let's move on. So we got. Okay, let me see if you guys understand this picture. So we start with 1, agree? Would this be one finger? Let me give you a choice. One finger would be dendrite. 2 would be soma. 3, axon. Right here. Starting point. Is this 1, 2, or 3? Those are your choices, 1, 2, or 3. Okay, most of you said 1, very good. Now who's on the dendrites? That's where information starts, agree? And look at the arrow goes this the way. Okay, it cannot be axon, because if it's axon, would it go to the cell body? Negative. So it has to be dendrite. Dendrite go to the cell body. Remember we did this already, didn't we? Yeah. Which means this right here, okay, so that's number 1. Soma, number 2. This would be number 3, agree? Right here. Number 3. Is that dendrite, soma, or axon? I'm at this point right here. Is that dendrite, soma, or axon? And I'm looking at this part right here. Yeah, this thing right here. 1, 2, or 3? Yes, it's the axon. Okay, remember the pathway was dendrite, cell body, axon, right? Dendrite, cell body, axon. You guys understand? And that's the flow, the directional flow. Okay? Alright, let's try this again. So that's sensory neuron, agree? It meets up with what? It meets up with an interneuron. So I'm going to call this 4, 5, 6. Agree? So someone tell me, what is 4? Dendrites of interneuron. Good. Now I get the hang of it. What's number 5? Cell body of interneuron. Number 6. Axon of interneuron. Okay? And number 7, 8, 9. Okay, I can't see you here, but trust me, this is 9. And 10. Agreed? So what's 7? Dendrites of motor neuron. Good. Number 8, cell body of motor neuron. And number 9, axon of motor neuron. We're going in this order, aren't we? Doesn't matter what neurons it is, it goes in this order. Okay? But in terms of placing the neurons, it's always sensory, then interneuron, then motor neuron. You guys understand the pathway? You can see this question coming on the next test, can't you? Yes, it's coming. That's why I want to make sure you get it. Yeah. Which one? The interneuron? The interneuron in this picture is definitely multipolar. Okay, multipolar. Yeah. So that's a multipolar neuron. This is also a multipolar neuron, isn't it? Yeah. And let me erase because I know I'm drawing all over it. Here we go. Yeah, multipolar, okay? So that's why multipolar neuron is usually the most famous one of all, because that's the majority, that's the bulk. Yeah,
I see a difference in color, is that significant?
oh, the different colors so that you can see where the sensory neuron ends and the interneuron begin, and then where the motor neuron begins as well. So that's why the changing color. So you see clearly which is which. Okay. For me, yes, I need to know the picture, and I need to know the order where information flows. Okay, and so that's why I'm taking the time to do it now. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can you tell again number 10?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Okay, so we finished with 9? All right, number 10. What do you think number 10 is? Skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle, right? So, let's review. True or false? Thumbs up or thumbs down, okay? True or false? In this picture, we start with the skin, we end with skeletal muscle. Agree? True or false? This is somatic nervous system. True or false? This picture is a somatic nervous system example. True or false? Okay, most of you say true, and that's correct. What is somatic? Voluntary, right? Voluntary. Are you voluntary contracting your skeletal muscle? Yes. Do you know when something is touching you?
Yeah.
Yes. So yes, you're conscious of it, you're aware of it, you're voluntarily contracting your skeletal muscle. It is somatic nervous system. Does this make sense? Okay, so yeah, so these are questions that could show up on the test, okay? All right. Do you guys need a break?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so let's take a